So you want to know how digital nomads manage to legally avoid taxes completely while everyone else gotta pay their big bold bill for the rest of their lives? There is this little known system that allows people to leverage a loophole in the system that the taxman doesn't want you to know about.
We probably shouldn't share this one, but who cares? Right? This system allowed us to earn more, build private wealth at a rate that was never even thought possible while traveling the world as a digital nomad. And of course, you're gonna be like, is this really legal? How is it even possible? And how can you do this for yourself?
We're gonna get into all of this plus a few bonuses in just a second. But first, it's important to understand how we were able to implement this system that quickly. So let's get started.
All right, so before we continue with this video, there's a quick disclaimer. None of this is financial advice. We're just sharing our opinion and our experience and our stories here on how we discovered this system. So my story on how I discovered this system for myself is pretty interesting because in the past I had severe burnout and I was looking for nice beaches at this time, and because it was November and in Germany and it was super cold, I hated everything basically. I was waking up and everything was gray, so I looked up the nicest beaches on earth, and then I discovered something really interesting, that the most beautiful places on earth, they have tax advantages. I needed to get something going because I started making some decent money in my businesses and I didn't want to just waste everything by slaving away for the taxman, right? And without getting any benefits. And I did some research, watched tons of webinars, right? And one stood out amongst all the others because it was sharing a principle that is called the flag theory. And this gave me the aha moment that there's a system out there that I can replicate for myself in order to live completely tax-free. And I also had some doubts and concerns about the whole thing because I was thinking maybe these countries are unsafe or so. So I discussed with my wife if it's just BS or misconceptions about the countries, because we were just told that certain countries have high crime or something. And yeah, we just went to some of those countries, we're going to the beaches and we're just exploring like with an open mind. And I just found out that these countries, they felt way more safe than Germany, for example. When you walk through Frankfurt, for example, you feel very unsafe. You feel like everybody's watching you and everybody wants to stab you in the back or something, right? Or you get robbed in the streets or so. I didn't have this feeling in any of those countries, right? And once I learned this whole process and I became really confident in just navigating these territorial tax countries, for example, I started the process of implementing the flag theory for myself, and I also got permanent residency in Panama. So this really got me started in the whole tax optimization game, right? And to really get the big picture here, once you have set this up completely, you can really live 100% tax-free, and the only thing that is left to do basically is just pay some fees in order to maintain the whole flag theory structure. And in that case, for example, it could be anywhere from $1,000 to $2,000 a year. Manu, what's your story about how you discovered the system?
Yes, Sam. So for me, it has some similarities, but like the whole topic, I got in touch with much earlier already because I grew up in Switzerland, where we have already like inside of the country, these different kind of tax levels. And so like this game started for me already like in my home country, Switzerland, where you could like move your company to one place and you live in another one, and then you pay like less taxes on your residential income, and depending on where the company is, like the corporate tax is lower. But like as I got my first project to like some level of success, like I got the tax bills rolling in, right? And they started to stack up as well. And so once that happened, I started to like obviously look for further optimizations. I got in contact with people that have these crazy company structures with like, I don't want to go too deep, like, but you have like a holding company there and then you move the money there and like all kind of crazy stuff. And then at that point, like talking to a lot of people, like also in the international space, I started learning about like what you had there as well. Like, oh, there are these places that you can actually completely avoid taxes at all. And so in that regard, I started, as I said, like interviewing lawyers and like building my network. But essentially, like it also came with a lot of concerns because obviously the laws are different in a different countries. People telling you like person or lawyer A tells you like this, and then lawyer B tells you like, yeah, not like the same. And like sometimes there's the language barrier and everything. They promise things like cultural shift. Well, I don't know how your experience is with that, but like growing up in a like the world considers very Western countries with like a lot of quality, like, you know, when things are promised, they are delivered, right? And once you start going into like a bit more of these, I don't know, like you are in Latin America, right? So like everything gets more slow and a little bit less reliable. And so yeah, this is my experience, but that came with without. So in the process, I wasted like a lot of fees for literally nothing, because I was like, this guy is not really reliable, that company is not really what I'm looking for. I also checked different countries, and with time I started traveling full time, which was always my dream, right? And I got in touch with digital nomads, and they telling me I do it this and that way, and it just got like momentum itself. And so once I started only spending like 10%, like 10% of my time in Switzerland, I was like, I'm not seeing the point of really paying taxes for the whole year, for the whole income I earn in a place where I'm not really at like most of the time. And so,
and you didn't get the benefit
because
you weren't there, right?
Benefit. Obviously it's a beautiful place, right? But still you don't get much back for that, right? Like it's also a different story, like if you really like what usually the government spends this stuff on, but that's topic for another time. So eventually I followed like kind of slowly your footsteps, and so started setting up like these structures that eventually allowed me to go into fully living tax-free as well. And so that is like a little excerpt from my story.
Can you quickly explain the theory and where it comes from?
Yeah, so like this system, as you said, is called like the flag theory. And to really go back where this is coming from, I want to quickly open Wikipedia and just read like a certain little passage there. So let me quickly do that. So according to Wikipedia, it says the three flag theory. So we're coming into that with three flags in a moment. The three flag theory is credited to investment pundit Harry D. Schultz, who proposed that everyone should have a second passport and an address in a tax haven, and that their assets should be kept outside their home country. And so this basic idea brings us to the three optimization points or assets that we're gonna look at today. And Sam, you might want to explain that a little bit further.
Sure. So in our opinion, there are really three key things that you need in order to make the flag theory work for you so that you can live 100% tax free. So first thing is your assets, basically your bank account, right? And you want to have a bank account in a secure country where the currency is stable, right? So you could, for example, have your bank account in Switzerland, which has tons of benefits, right? And this will not make you tax resident in Switzerland, because there's something called the 180-day rule, where you spend most of your time in. That's where you are income tax resident, basically. So this is also the second pillar of the whole flag theory, right? And to get started, you just need these three. And some people even say, okay, you can have up to 15 flags, for example, but I think that's overkill. Just to get started, you need these three, right? And for the residency part, it might make sense to move to a country and declare your taxes in a country with territorial tax or zero tax. For example, this could be countries like Costa Rica, for example, like the United Arab Emirates or Hong Kong, Macau, Malaysia, Panama, Paraguay, and Singapore, right? There are so many countries. And of course, you can look up the entire list on Wikipedia, for example, on where it might make sense to put your tax residence to.
You just mentioned territorial tax, and I think for everyone new to the topic, that might be like, what is that? So essentially what Sam means by that is like countries that do not tax you on foreign income, and we come into that with the corporate side, like the business side in a moment. But essentially, as long as the income is coming outside of the country, you don't pay any taxes. And like some that you just read down are the case for that.
So we have this part where we have the territorial taxes, where they don't tax you on foreign income, basically. And the next part, the third pillar of the whole flag theory, is your company, right? So you want to have your company in a country that's separate from your bank account and from your residency, where they don't have corporate taxes, right? And there's so many different countries that you can use, and so many corporate structures that you can use. And really the key thing here is to find something that's working for you, right? And once you do have those three, you live truly independent, right? There's no information exchange between these countries, and this is the most important thing here, right?
Absolutely, Sam. And now I think it's time to shed a light on like, who is this actually for? Who can actually implement that kind of strategy? And since we are like digital nomads, I think this is like one of the focus points, right? Once you start traveling the world, there's also like this word perpetual traveler. So you start like traveling all the time. That comes in together with this whole theory. So essentially, once you are location independent work-wise, and you can like really choose where you want to live, this becomes very interesting for you. As well, if you are just expat, you travel maybe like a little bit slowly, you move to another country, but you want to maybe like spend your time vacation.
Yeah, slow traveling is basically staying longer in one location. And this is also for all the experts among us, right? People who just moved from their home country, for example, to the UAE or so, and they're just staying there full time, or slow travelers who decide to stay in a country for 1 or 2 years just to see how the culture is and immerse themselves really. This might make sense for you. And if you might asking, okay, I can do this because I have a family, this is just an excuse, right? Because this is also working for families, and I've seen so many families starting this whole digital nomad lifestyle or becoming expats or doing slow traveling with their entire family. In this day and age, right, you can get your kids educated online, for example. There are so many programs, and most of the countries are as safe as your home country, right? So there's really no disadvantage on doing it. It's quite the opposite, right? There's more advantage on doing that. So you're more location independent. The only thing that is really important when you do have a family, I think it's important in general, but if you have a family, it's even more important, is that you have a stable income, right? And this income should also be location independent. So some form of online work would be very beneficial, maybe an online business or an online side hustle.
Sure thing, Sam. And like this whole thing is like kind of a bit of controversial as well, and brings up like really the question, really legal? Do people go in prison for that? Like obviously, yes, the taxman doesn't want you to know about these things. And as we are going into it a little bit deeper, like this is not what they teach us at school or somehow. So it's, yeah, let's have a look at that. So like how comes that this can actually be legal? And so the explanation is very simple. Countries obviously on their own, they just do some kind of limited collaboration with each other. Obviously every country wants to grow their economy. They have their tax income based on the population. But once you start like combining things across borders and go international, that starts really playing out in your favor if you can do it, right? And we just talked about who can actually do this. So countries are obviously interested in growing further and put out some kind of like, we call it like bonuses for people doing business there or living there, or even like to move people to certain places. So
yeah, I've even heard that Italy sells houses, like the government sells houses for €1 just to attract new people. So this is how far governments go to attract new people into a place.
Have some little towns, if you want to go there and love nature, you actually get paid like 25,000 or something if you move there. So yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy. And so obviously countries try to kind of close these loopholes. There is like this information transfer between some of them. So getting definitely harder to be fully transparent here, but it is still possible. And on the other hand, you have all these new things coming up where you have countries opening since like the COVID time with like digital nomad visas, or like I think recently we had a conversation about Asia, Sam, where like you have a lot of countries where you get actually like tax bonuses or like off the taxes for like the first 3-4 years, and then you move there and nobody like says you have to stay there. You could just like stay there for like a few years and then just go to the next place and the next place, and there's like quite a bunch of them, so you can like do this for quite a long time, I'd say. Yes. And so like if doors are closing, there are new ones opening, and there's always something to look at and optimize for.
Yes, Manu. So why isn't everyone doing this, right? What's the catch, Manu?
Yeah, so as I briefly mentioned before, the taxman doesn't want you to know about these things. Obviously, every government wants the income of the population, which is generally how it works, right? And for like the, let's call it like the average Joe 9-to-5 worker that just stays, lives and works in the same city like for all their life, this system is not even interesting, as the tax rules really keep them in this system, in this fence where they just are obliged to pay taxes, right? And yeah, obviously it's a bit of insider knowledge as well, right?
And for some people it's also the cost, right? You obviously need to hire lawyers, for example, to open the companies, to do the visas. Obviously you have to create bank accounts, right? You need to travel to those places, need to buy plane tickets, and sometimes you even need to provide proof of you living in this place. So you need to rent an apartment, right? You need some utility bills or something like that to prove that you're really at this place. And for some people this can be quite overwhelming at the beginning, right? In terms of the cost and then the learning curve.
Absolutely,
and
went through
things,
that
right?
as well. As I said, like lots of fees wasted if you don't know what you're doing. We spoke, I think you mentioned the 15 flags before, right? Like there's even other levels you can take this to. So depending, for example, where you got born, you got the passports, depending on like what nation's parents are from. And so there's like, there are options, for example, to change like your passport or add an additional passport. And that is then going into high fees. And for some people that makes absolute sense, but we can talk of here like $100K for like, I think some Caribbean islands. I'm not 100% sure which one it was. I think you get Malta, like your entrance into the European Union for like 1 million if you like can pay that down, right? And so like depending where you are with your life and with your business, even if that sounds like a lot, for some people it just can pay off in like a year or 2 or 3 to do that move. And essentially, again, some people it's also holding back and you're like, oh, this is so much, I cannot do it. So it comes really down to where you are right now and what you want to optimize for. But this passport is like next level, I'd say.
And to implement this for yourself, it might make sense to start with your income first. Make that location independent, right? Start something like nomadic clothing that you can do from anywhere in the world so that you can sustain your lifestyle as a digital nomad or as an expat or a slow traveler or what have you, right? So this is really the base, right? And from there, when it might make sense to start traveling, for example, then you can do everything else, right? You can do the residency, you can open up those bank accounts, you can start these company structures, but you need to have some revenue going because this will be the foundation of everything. And then in the long term, this becomes like a game, right? You can do some investments, you can get some more passports, and this is not just built in 5 years, 10 years. This can be lifelong, right? And this is the beauty about it. It doesn't get boring.
Yes, and when you say lifelong, like that sounds like a long time, right? Some people might be asking right now, like, how fast can this actually really be implemented? For example, if I'm just starting out. And so like it's important to say, with all the things and the complexity this can take, starting simple and like wanting to start right now, you can absolutely do that. You can really start the process of implementing this system right now by starting your location independent business online. So generally speaking, this is a very individual topic and it needs a bit of planning before you jump headfirst into it. But no matter what you're having on your mind right now, to be really able to leverage this, you need a business model that allows you to work from anywhere so that you can take full advantage of a 0% tax bill. And for that reason, we've prepared another video for you that shows you the 7 side hustles that can get you to $500 a day as a digital nomad. And so you can watch that video right now if you click here.